And when you said back to the basics, I was thinking back to the basics of journalism. One of the questions, obviously, when you're a journalist is how. And I'm thinking back to the very beginning of this conversation. I mean, how did this happen? I was listening to WCCO yesterday. A lot of Minnesotans sounded really fed up. They felt that they were forgotten about where they live in their state. They're fed up with Walz. They're fed up with this fraud story. Is there a sense in Minnesota of understanding exactly how this happened? Or because, as you said, pieces are still being uncovered, there's not an exact number of how much fraud there has been happening out there. Is there a sense yet of how this happened?
I would chalk it up to three things. One is Minnesota nice. We don't want to be super mean to people. Oh, you made a mistake. Minnesota passive aggressive. Maybe they didn't ask aggressive questions as journalists fast enough or hard enough. And then, the noise of the partisanship and the polarization we hear dominates the conversation when the real facts about the fraud didn't get out or people didn't know them. They have such an emotional reaction. So how did it happen? I think it's complex. And I think that's the unraveling that people are waiting to see. And the reality is journalists have requested documents, reporters have requested interviews, and people have not been made available. And I think one of the things that I think people are starting to realize is that if you're not willing to talk and you're a public employee, or you're not willing to let documents go, and they're public documents that you could release, that maybe you're hiding more than you are. And then that becomes where we learn how, Brittany, is how did it happen once we get in there. The last piece on that is that, nationally we talk about the Epstein files, and that is a lot of noise and a lot of things. Well, none of the Minnesota fraud files have been released by the governor, and he can approve releasing them. So I would say that could be where we learn how, but it also could be more of the downfall and more of the legacy of Tim Walz if he doesn't release those files. Because I guarantee you the next governor will be forced to.
I heard you talking about this yesterday, and you said something like your spidey senses go up as a journalist when people stop talking. And I agree with that. Once you hear radio silence from someone, hey, I'm onto something here. There's a story here that needs to be uncovered. So as the person who is one of the leading reporters on this story, your boots on the ground there, what specifically are you looking out for next?
So just to be clear, I'm an analyst, not a reporter. I do not make my living as a journalist. I just want to be clear, because sometimes people push back and say you should do more, or people say you're not a reporter. We analyze, we look at trends in the politics of things and the policy of things. What am I looking for next? I'm looking for the thread to pull on, or the thread that other people pull on. And I'll give you an example. In the last 24 hours, this latest audit that came out, the governor's office, his administration, received the draft copy of that in the first week of December. So they had a month to get ready for an audit that said documents were backdated and documents were created after the audit began, which everybody knows is a big no-no and is not good practice. And the state independent legislative auditor called them out on it. She also said another thing. This is the first time we found it, even though we've suspected it in the past. And that's a thread to pull on. It also goes to show that for a month, his administration knew that this audit was coming. On Tuesday, January 6th, which makes the idea that he had to make a decision over the weekend about whether or not he could survive another bad audit and another investigation, a moment that he probably really had to think about how he was going to answer those questions. Lastly, he planned his press conference yesterday at 11:30. The audit came out at 2, and there's no media appearance today, and there's no statement today. That's the silence that keeps me curious.